I came across RNT. At the time, I thought it was fake. I was like, something's not right here. Is this real? Is this platform real? Or is this just some website on the internet that claims to do this kind of thing? Do my trip, I come back, and I'm in just excruciating pain after I got checkups done that I had herniated 2 of my discs. I didn't really chalk it up to the same things as to say Nisha's diagnosis came because we were leading an unhealthy lifestyle or anything to that effect. It was more so be present, be reliable, be an example. Can I do this with my travel, family, social, work, and building a consistent plan around the goals that I have? RNT helped me along the way to build upon that foundation. There's days when I'll wake up and I'll scroll through my progress and I'll be like, wow, I was here and now I'm here. But the reality is I'm a completely different here than when I was at the same time at the same weight back then. The non-negotiables has created this need, this want, this desire, that continuity, and treating the physical as the vehicle. Now I'm able to get a lot more accomplished without sacrificing some of the other things that are important to me, family, work.
Okay, so Bhavin, take me back, what must be 2 years now? Take me back 2 years ago. What were the series of moments that led to your trigger moment to kickstart your transformation journey?
Thanks for having me on the podcast. I mean, I think the biggest piece that, I kind of want to start a little bit differently. For one, for me, it all kind of starts from a journey of, when I was growing up. I grew up Gujarati, vegetarian diet. It's just growing up, sports, fitness, nutrition, generally the education around that subject, just non-existent, completely non-existent. And, as I grew older, these learned habits, kind of formed just a general baseline that didn't lead to good outcomes. By the time I was 18, I was probably 180 pounds at 5'3", and, with a family history of diabetes, heart issues, etc., it truly became a wake-up call. And in my first year of college, I lost 40 pounds. And, around that same time, it was still to the point where nutrition was never really a learned behavior. I was eating a little bit of meat. I was dabbling here and there, but one could argue that didn't really understand what macros were, and one could argue that if somebody asked me what they were, I probably wouldn't even be able to speak to them. And the real trigger event took place in around 2021. COVID had happened. We had just moved to Dallas. It had been 6 months. We were getting pretty gluttonous in our lifestyle, as I'm sure many people did. And we went from a period of social activity and physical activity to non-existent, completely unavailable to you. I, bought a AI-based home gym system and started to prioritize strength training, that sort of thing, and still found myself growing in weight. And part of it had to do with the fact that, we were just eating uncontrollably, right? No real set boundaries, and, got into this habit of, doing all the effort, but seeing none of the results. And it wasn't until, some point in time in 2021, I was dropping Nisha off at one of her treatments. And, I had just finished a HIIT workout the day before and was like, I'm going to go into an in-person training session. So I went into a fitness studio, did an in-person HIIT workout, and I was supposed to travel for work in the next day or two. Got home and, brought both of us back. And all of a sudden, I started to feel this back pain and some sensation, and, didn't really understand what it was at the time. A few days go by, I do my trip, I come back, and I'm in just excruciating pain. Realize, after I got some checkups done, that I had herniated 2 of my discs. And, that ultimately was, around the same time, I was like, let me look into some nutritionists, let me look into some trainers, let me see what I can do to, modify how I'm approaching things. And I came across RNT, around before the herniation of my disc. And I'd even reached out to you. I was like, hey, let's get on a call. I want to understand what it is that you guys do. And third quarter 2021, I was actually this close to signing up for the cohort. And at the time, I thought it was fake. I was like, this is, something's not right here. I was like, I don't know if this is like this hoax or, you don't really know. And at the time I was in my digging deeper, I found out like there was a few folks that had been through your journey, guys that I had been to college with that I haven't spoken to in a very long time. And I was like, all right, there's some real people here that I actually know. So I took the leap after I went through 6 to 7 PT sessions, 2 epidural injections. And I was like, all right, like I got to do something here. And so in 2022, January, I finally signed up and said, hey, some changes need to be made.
And what were you hoping to achieve?
I think obviously the physical side of it is key, right? I was hoping to achieve some true education, and as you always state and Ed always states, how strong are your core non-negotiables, and relying on them and leaning on them is probably the key to any successful outcome. And it wasn't really true to that until I started to really think about like what are the non-negotiables for me. And for me, why I started with the family side of it is it was never a priority for me. It shaped who I was. It grew to become the inner core of who I became. People in I come from a very large and extended family. That large and extended family, I've got, my mom has 9 brothers and sisters. My dad has 4 brothers and sisters. Each of them have 2 or 3 kids. We're very close knit. Growing up, we were 90 minutes apart. One side of the family was probably a little bit better about their lifestyle, and other part of my family not so much. And it just became this habitual way of life for us. And I didn't want the same thing for our children. I wanted them to be able to see what we do and how we live to shape what they will become. And so what I wanted to really get out of joining RNT wasn't just, getting into the best shape of my life. It was also the education aspect of what is it that we should be consuming? How much of it is it that we should be consuming? What is considered to be a balanced and sustainable lifestyle and diet? And I think that is true to its point because of the various things that we have learned along the way. And RNT has taught me that. When
you were thinking about doing something about your health and fitness, where in the journey was Nisha with her treatment? And maybe give a quick one-liner on, just for people who haven't heard Nisha's story. What happened?
So it was probably in the middle of somewhere around 2021. It was she was probably in her 2nd or 3rd treatment. So we were, maybe 2nd or 3rd or 3rd or 4th, and I bought the home gym system. I was trying to create some sort of a balance and some structure. It was actually summertime because the kids weren't home. We had dropped them off, to their grandparents on the East Coast. And it was tough. It was a unfortunate circumstance and just a absolute roadblock in our life. And so while that was happening, that was a big part of also why this became important, is she was down for the count. And here I am, somewhat bedridden, having people that were coming to help us take me to appointments for PT, or whether it's to get, some minor procedure. Meanwhile, she's going through multiple chemo treatments for Hodgkin's lymphoma, right? So I realized and recognized that it wasn't just about, the nutrition and the aspect of things. It's how do I want to live my life so I can support the people around me, right? And become an example, not only for the kids, but reshape how we want to approach things, right? I didn't really chalk it up to the same things as to say, oh, Nisha's diagnosis came because we were leading an unhealthy lifestyle or anything to that effect. It was more so, be present, be reliable, be an example. And that's kind of what really took it in tune for me.
One thing you mentioned is you struggled with your weight as a teenager, and then you got to university, you lost 40 pounds. What happened between university and 2021? Because
I was classic yo-yo mode, right? Like okay. I ran multiple half marathons. I ran a full marathon in 2018. I thought at the time I was in the best shape of my life. I was like, oh, this is great. Like, I can still do this. Running sub 10-minute full marathon in Chicago, and it wasn't true. It wasn't the case. I was fluctuating anywhere between 135 and 145, and I thought this is good because I had seen the other side of it. I was all the way up to 180. I never went back anywhere close to above 148, 149. And then once I hit the scales of COVID, I was like, I'm at like 150, like give or take. And I'm like, this is not good. Like I don't want to end up to where I was before, kind of thing. Even then, I thought that, like, looking back at the pictures now from when I first started RNT, I thought I was okay at that time. I thought that I didn't look physically in a manner that I didn't want to look. And while I was going through the journey in the fat loss phase, and I was, getting closer and closer to checkpoint, I was like, man, I'm too lean. Like, Jeet came and gave me a hug one day. I still remember this. I was probably 4 pounds away from checkpoint, 3 pounds away from checkpoint, which for me was around 110 pounds, 111 pounds. And I took a step back when he gave me a hug, and I'm like, oh wow, I can't even stop a 40-pound child running up to me to give me a hug. I was like, all right, we got to get out of this phase and build some core and build some strength. Like,
what was your height's 5'3"?
I'm 5'3".
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
So you spent years and years in sort of a yo-yo period, tried loads of different things, but never really got the physique.
Never really, yeah. And throughout that time frame until probably about 2019, 2020, even the strength training was never really, it wasn't a thing for me. I was doing a lot of cardio. I didn't think of it to be an important factor, right? I wasn't, going through the process of let's get into the gym and let's separate out strength training versus cardio exercise, that sort of thing. I was doing a lot of HIIT workouts. I was doing long runs. I was, being active. Mm-hmm. But even then, I was still not getting 10,000 steps a day. Even like on the days when I do my long run, sure, right? But it wasn't like, hey, get out there and run, walk 10,000 steps a day, no matter what, right? That's something that RNT taught me. It taught me to be consistent, give yourself time to recover. I think that was truly one of those things that I was under the mindset that if I'm not doing something to the extreme every time, then I'm not getting results. But the reality is quite the opposite. The reality is that you can't give it your all when you need to if you're not giving your body enough time to recuperate.
Yeah, it's one of those. It's a trap that
it's a conundrum. Yeah.
Yeah, especially if you're a high achiever in your career, you sort of think like everything more. The more you do, the more you get, right? And you can kind of fall into that trap, and you bleed it into fitness, and you see your body break down instead.
100%. Yeah.
So let's switch gears to the start of 2022. So you made this decision. You thought it was fake. Then you saw some people who'd been on the program, jumped in, had these goals in mind. How did you find the initial process? What was the early days like for you in terms of changing your lifestyle?
Well, I didn't blend tempeh. Let's just put it that way. I think the CTP phase was very difficult just because it was, at the time, it was a lot of food. And I had actually started the journey as a vegetarian. I was like, you know what? I dabbled in meat. I thought I was doing it because I wanted to get protein and I wanted to be, I wanted to reset completely. And unlike Nisha, I didn't go a complete vegan route, but that was the goal of hers. But I started the journey as vegetarian in the diet plan and started to educate myself. Like, what are the options available to me, right? And very quickly realized, I was like, oh, okay, like there are plant-based protein options that are available, fewer availabilities to what you're seeing in Europe, but still available, right? We've got tofu, we've got tempeh, we've got seitan, we've got the edamame pastas of the world, which, I would say, I know that you love it. I've seen a lot of the stuff that you've pointed out in the edamame pasta. When I started at first, I didn't blend tempeh, but I was air frying edamame pasta in eating it raw with black salt, because I was like, I can't stomach just unseasoned, because during CTP
you were frying pasta.
I was air frying pasta, like just raw, like, and eating it like on top of salads and crunchy like aspect or some sort of a textural change, because in that first 2 week to 3 week period, we're clearly guided not to change and add anything that is going to impact your cleansing of the palate, right? So no pasta sauce, no lemon, no, like just dry seasoning, etc. And I'm a guy that likes flavor, right? Like, so Nisha could eat the same thing every day for years on end. I need variety. Yeah. And so for me, that was difficult. And even coming out of COVID from 2021 to 2023, I was on a very aggressive travel schedule. And in 2022 and 2023, it got progressively that much more consistent. Like, I just went through an exercise here at work last week, where I was asked, hey, how many trips did you make it to the Caribbean in 2023? And so I had to go into my apps and try to actually figure it out. And lo and behold, I made 23 trips. That was just for work. If you put that into perspective, that's about 75 days on the road.
So 23 times you went out 23 times to the Caribbean for work.
Yes, for work.
Yeah.
And, initially it was we've got, a full kitchen. We may or may not be buying ingredients. And then it transitioned into, okay, now we're transitioning out of being in an apartment setting to being, in a work setting. So we're eating out a lot, that sort of thing. We're testing menus because we're building a resort, right? So we built a 484 key, 20-acre beach pad resort, 10 restaurants. So we're testing and working through, all these things and all these nuances. Meanwhile, I'm going through a lifestyle change, right? So balancing the two and being on the road, it started very early for me.
So you got a pina colada in one hand and you got a bottle of water in the other hand.
Well, the first 6 months of RNT, it transitioned into a completely like, all right, I'm 100% focused. Carrying food with me along the way, carrying, gigantic water bottles with me, along the way, like on planes, right? Like, and, initially I even got into a conversation with Ivan once, and he was like, hey, like, I was on, mind you, like, because of all that travel, I wasn't participating in cohort activity. I wasn't participating necessarily in, the video calls. A, because of the time change, and B, because, it just wasn't convenient to get through it. So sometimes I'd come on board, and sometimes like I was running through airports and on a call, like with people live, and then other times, just listening a couple of days later. And he was asking me, he's like, hey, how often are you weighing yourself? And I was like, I'm probably weighing myself like once every 10 days right now. He's like, why? And I was like, well, I'm traveling all the time. He's like, you're carrying that giant jug. He's like, go out and buy a portable, go out and buy a portable scale. So now I travel with my portable scale everywhere I go, because it just became ingrained into the lifestyle that I live now. Right. So, the travel aspect of it, going back to your question, it was very difficult, but I, learned along the way, and I got to understand through you and through Ed and through Ivan, like, when you're eating out, how do we do it? Right. What are we going to do differently than what we used to do when we used to do this? If I'm having a cocktail with somebody, what does that mean? What is the intent of the reason that I'm here? Am I here for work, or am I here for a true social gathering? And those are the things that really kind of instilled better values and better habits and better, just better goals into what I wanted to accomplish.
Can we dive into the travel aspect a little bit more? Because I think a lot of people listening may be struggling with work travel, and it can easily become an excuse of, I'm just going to put this off for another year because I've got too much of a work schedule. And the reality is, if you said that, you'd still be waiting to start because your work travel schedule it's not easing up, right? What, like, outside, I think you've gained one, which is weighing yourself regularly. What other key tactics really helped you, during a process phase, losing weight, and then also in being able to maintain and control your weight ever since? Like, what three things would you impart to someone who struggles with a busy, relentless work schedule?
Well, for one, lean on your non-negotiables. Like, those are paramount, right? Secondly, if you're in a situation like I was in, then lean on the value of the fact that always try to consume the one plate rule, for one. Secondly, make it balanced, right? So, I've gotten to a rhythm where I can look at a plate of food and I can pretty quickly, I'm more than likely wrong, right? But I'd rather be consistently inconsistent than not at all, right? So if I'm looking at a piece of meat or if I'm looking at a piece of tofu, then I can pretty quickly see, I was like, all right, I got my appropriate portion of protein on the plate, right? Then I got to balance off with the carbs and the veggies. Making sure that is your baseline is very, very important, because if you veer outside of it, then it becomes very difficult to be able to live that sustainable lifestyle. If you're consistently going out and having fried chicken or burgers or fries and that sort of thing, and desserts, and have no veggies, no fruit, and no satiating food. And I want to key in on that, is because you might eat a lot and think that you're satiated, but if you're not consuming the right things, even if you feel satiated for a moment in time, an hour later you're still going to be hungry. Right? And I think that those two things are probably what really drove to some consistent, sustainable outcomes for me. So even today, right? Like not today, like a few weeks ago, when I travel, it's usually an 8-hour day on a plane for me. So what I like to do, even if the flight's at 4 a.m., then I'll wake up a little bit earlier. I'll get to the airport and I'll walk around before I get on my plane. Then on my layover, I'll walk around. When I get to the site, I'll do whatever I got to get done. And if I haven't worked out yet, I'll work out before I go to bed, right? On the days when my flights are at 6 a.m., I'll probably wake up at 4 a.m. still, or 5 or 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. and I'll get a workout in before I leave, because then I don't have an excuse to say that I didn't try, I didn't get it done, right? And one thing that I heard you say once is, whenever you're traveling, wherever you're going, first thing that you like to do is get a workout in.
Yeah.
Right. So I took that to heart, and I tried to make it work for me. The difference for me is my travel is inconsistent. It's inconvenient.
Yeah.
So take that excuse away, and how do I accomplish it in a different way?
Yeah. It's
even right now,
adjust yourself.
Like even right now, I have a home gym still, which I very rarely use. I have an access to a gym near my house, and I have 2 gyms in my building at work, and I've got showers. So it's not an excuse for me to say, okay, I was late today because I had to drop off the kids. It's not an excuse for me to say, hey, I forgot to do it in the morning, or I couldn't get to it in the morning. I can get it done at lunch. I can get it done after work. I can get it done right before I start my calls. I take a lot of walking meetings, right? Even this podcast that we were going to do today, I debated about whether I should do this while I was walking or whether I wanted to sit in one stationary spot and have this conversation. But
I'm glad you didn't do that, because I would have told you to reschedule.
Right. Yeah. We want to be intentional with our time. Right.
Yeah.
So, I've tried really, really hard to eliminate the excuses and be consistent with what it is that I want to do. The only thing that I will say has been a challenge is I went from being at 30 minutes a day, 30 minutes each session for cardio, to 45. And then Ed wanted me to remain at 45. I realized along the way that 45 was just not something that I'm going to be able to get done consistently. Right. So I said, okay, fine, let's strip that away. And, whether Ed agrees with me or not is a different thing. It's just, I know that I don't have the time. I can't make the time. And unless I drastically change something, I won't be able to consistently do it. right? But what are still my non-negotiables is three lifting workouts a week, 2 cardio workouts per week, 10,000 steps a day. And if I'm feeling better about it, then I'll try and get, whatever my Apple Watch goals are, which are, on the days when I'm not working out, still trying to get, the calorie expenditure that I want. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. And that's okay if it doesn't, because that's my recuperation period.
What do you say to yourself when you're in that moment of choosing results or excuses? Because it's so easy when you've got kids, you've got a busy work schedule, you've got this travel inconvenience as well, and it's so easy to justify things, right?
It
what
really
do you say?
is,
and it's all a split second, isn't it? It's a split second decision.
It certainly is. It's a split second, and it happened to me. Yeah, it actually happened to me yesterday. I woke up at 5 a.m. and I don't know what it was. I was feeling a little down. I was feeling like I was less energetic. I realized very quickly that I didn't get enough sleep. Like I went to sleep at like 10:30 or 10:45 instead of 9:30 or 9:45. I didn't know at the time that I was going to try to wake up at 5 a.m. And I still went. And because I was not feeling in the best moment, I was like, all right, we're not going to try to hit any, extravagant PRs today. We're not going to try to like do something that's going to cause you to get injured. But a little goes a long way. And I still got a full strength training workout in. I didn't deadlift, which I normally would on Mondays. Instead, I rotated between hamstring curls and leg press, leg extensions, and I got everything else done. Right? I realized that because whether it was from the week before or because I wasn't feeling at my best, that I wasn't going to say no to myself. I'm not injured, right? And if I'm not injured, then there's no good excuse for me not to show up, right? That's first and foremost. The second thing is, and Nisha likes to remind me of this, on the days when I don't work out, I'm not in the best mood. Because it's not necessarily a meditation, because you are being active and you are doing something with your mind. But for me, it's my time, right? It's my time to maybe listen to some music, do something that I enjoy doing, and keep it fun. If you're not having fun with it, to make a slight change, right? Don't make them all the time, because maybe not everything's fun. Like I don't like Bulgarian splits, but I still do them sometimes, right? Because they're a tremendous exercise. I herniated my disc. I actually herniated my disc twice. I herniated my disc during post-fat loss phase, and I realized it very, very quickly, immediately, but my recovery was so different because I'm in much better shape and I knew how to get out of it. And I stopped deadlifting for probably 6 months, and about 2 weeks ago, I hit a PR coming out of that. So, pre-injury, I was probably in the 130, 150 range. I hit 195, 205 last week.
Nice.
Right. So it was Ivan that probably kind of steered me in that direction. When I asked him, I'm like, hey, I was like, what do you think? Like, my doctors are telling me that I shouldn't do this. And, he's like, listen, he's like, physios can a lot of times steer you in the wrong direction. He wasn't trying to give me medical advice, but he's like, the only thing that's going to help you long-term is to build upon that strength. And so I slowly got myself back into that rhythm and worked my way back up from being all the way at the bottom of it. I started basically from scratch again. I was like, all right, let's slow and steady, slow gains, slow wins, and work yourself that way. But, going back to your point is, it's, if you wake up and you're not feeling great about yourself that day, do something, because it's, ask yourself, step back and ask yourself, why am I not feeling good? Right? Is it because you didn't sleep well? Is it because you didn't eat well? Is it because you're tired? Is it because you're bored? Right? And then ask yourself, is the reason that you're not going to do what you're supposed to do because of one of those? Is it something that you can change? Is it something that you can slightly tweak to still accomplish what you want to get accomplished? On my cardio days, when I'm not feeling up to it, I might move it around. I don't do the same thing twice. This morning I did a Peloton workout, spinning workout, probably for the first time in 2 months. And it was challenging. And I don't typically consistently do that because I look at that as a true, like it's a tough workout. Like tomorrow I'm going to feel it, but tomorrow's a lifting day for me. So I'll get up and I'll do it all over again.
I think that mindset is definitely the difference between those who stay in shape and those who rebound, of just accepting that it's not going to be perfect. And most days you're not going to feel like going to train, especially when there's multiple pulls on your priorities. The way I like to do it, I don't know if you've done this, is when I know I've got really busy days. Like today, I've got a heavy recording day, so I'm doing a lot of videos, quite a few podcasts as well. I'm recording, and I made it a rest day because I don't want the extra pressure of a workout because I know it's going to be tight. So of my 5 training days, I've just moved things around so that this day is a rest day, and that way I don't have to make that decision, but it just helps with adherence, but also knowing that I'm not missing a workout. It's just scheduled for a different day today because this is the priority. And I think that also can really help when you are juggling multiple things, just to know that things can move, things can be flexible. But the key thing is at the end of 7 days, you've got all the necessary work done. Talk to me about life since your checkpoint. So you hit your checkpoint maybe 9-10 months into the journey. About then?
Yes. It was. So the irony of my checkpoint is I hit it, and I couldn't find a photographer, right? And I didn't get it scheduled, right? And then so a couple weeks go by, I'm in consolidation, and I finally found somebody. Then I go to Ed. I'm like, Ed, I found a photographer. I was like, I want to do this. And he goes, well, he's like, now we should wait until like mid-January if you want to do it. And I'm like, no, we're not doing that. I was like, I'm scheduling this and we're going to do it. And so I went back. I was in like 6 pounds post checkpoint. So I went back into checkpoint around that same time, and I got it done in December. Life after checkpoint, and I'm not a social guy. I'm like a lot of the other folks. Like I don't post things. I don't engage in Facebook, Instagram, that sort of thing. The 12-week challenge was a new thing for me. Like I started to participate. I posted every week. I think Nisha and I were probably 2 of the only individuals that did. Some of the other folks did as well. But, it was one of those things that Nisha encouraged me, like, hey, like share your journey. And, going back to the point of why I did this, is one of them in many respects is to be an example. My journey, a lot of people came and talked to me about it after the fact. A lot of people along the way as well. They came up and said, hey, like you're too skinny. What are you doing to yourself? And they didn't really understand what it is that we were trying to accomplish, right? Or even that the only reason that they were asking that question, and we talk about this a lot, whether it's in the cohorts or whether it's on video calls, is they're asking for one of 2 reasons, right? One is whether they're uneducated on the subject, or they're, and I hate saying this, but they're envious, right? Mm-hmm. I don't like to use the word jealous, but they want to try and accomplish what you're potentially trying to accomplish. The reason I bring that up is in my post journey, along with a lot of people asking me about it, many folks that Nisha and I both know have joined RNT. And I'm very ecstatic and happy to see that. And whether they reach out and ask for guidance or assistance is one thing, and I'm always willing to give that. In fact, we started our own little WhatsApp group here domestically in the US, and I think we're into the double digits of people that are just in there, and like we don't really always talk, but if somebody ever has a question or whatever, then we're just a sounding board. That journey post checkpoint, it's been very interesting for me, and I think I mentioned this in a previous conversation with you. It's a little bit of a mind game, if you will, right? Where I'm within the weight range that Ed wants me to be in, between like that 111, 115 to one maximum 118, 120 range to build muscle. And every week when I'm in the gym, I'm hitting strides, I'm doing well, I'm getting bigger, but I'm also weighing a lot more. And I can see it, I can feel it. And there's some days when I keep going through this turbine of like, well, should I lower my calories? Should I take a step back? Should I trim down a little bit? And I keep reminding myself that it's the long game, right? And that is definitely an everyday thing, right? Like it's an everyday thing to be consistent, to let the process kind of work its own path. And when that time comes, we'll get to the eventual outcome, and we'll do the work to see the results. But that has been a challenge for a lot of different reasons. Because there's days when I'll wake up and I'll scroll through my pictures or scroll through my progress and I'll be like, wow, I was like, I was here and now I'm here. Like, but the reality is I'm a completely different here than when I was at the same time at the same weight, back then, right? Like 120 now or 118 now or 117 now compared to 117, 118, 119, 120 pre checkpoint, you feel different. Your body composition may or may not be different. Your mental state is definitely different because your goals you're locked in, right? And that's been very consistent for me, but it's been a challenge.
I think you stay stuck in how well you've done in keeping that weight range, because it's only about 5-10% above your checkpoint weight, which is very impressive to stay in with a muscle building phase. And I think where your mind games probably stem from is the fact that at one point in your life you're 180. So there's this thinking of like, I've got into the best shape of my life. If I'm going up, I'm going back there potentially, but that's not going to happen because you're doing muscle building in a controlled fashion. And if you're able to keep that range, that's a behavior, mindset, and identity rewiring and change that's happening. That's not tangible, and it's very impressive to be within. And as you said, and I think we spoke about this on a separate call, was if you can milk staying in this range and continue to get stronger and stronger, get that 205 deadlift up to 225, 240 over the next year and a half, it's only going to improve your physique and your long-term strength gains. So the benefits are going to be massive. And like you said, that 120 will just keep looking better and better and better. And who knows, one day that might be your checkpoint weight.
It's true to its core that weight pushes weight.
Yeah.
I mean, evidenced by my 7-year-old kid running up to me and almost putting me on my heels, right? It's completely that conversation, I think, was a good reminder of just trying to follow the process and be confident in what the goals are and how we're going to get there.
You ever think
I will say that. Yeah, go ahead.
You go.
I would say, one of the things that also changed for me is because I travel a lot, and because I don't like meal prepping. I started to in the very initial stages, and I never have, even since then. And I think that it's become a little bit of a detriment for the household to a certain degree because Nisha really wants to meal prep, and we've gotten into a consistent rhythm of like, all right, Mondays we'll do this, Tuesdays we'll do this, Wednesdays we'll do this. Breakfast and dinner we have together, lunch I'm on my own, right? Because I'm at work. Or if I'm traveling, then it's a whole new ballgame. But one of the things, my cousin Barimo, who's in his fat loss phase, and he's in a similar situation as I am, where we either travel or we do, we like to live a little bit more flexibly. And so he took, the framework of our meal plan and put it into an Excel Google-based doc. And so I built my own drop downs. And now I started to load up kind of like, okay, what are my consistent things or what are my inconsistent things? I created sandboxes inside of them. So now when I travel or when I'm eating, just whatever, I think I want to, then I'm logging along the way, staying within my parameters. So if you go into RNT, I don't have a meal plan. And so if Ed wants to check in on my meal plan, he's never asked, but I don't know if he's truly recognized that I haven't had a meal plan in the system. One of the things that we did talk about was, hey, let's make sure if we're eating into it's partial path to eating intuitively, but I want to be careful about that because I also don't want to get into death by 1,000 cuts. Yeah. And that's one thing that he and I talked a little bit about in the last 2 weeks. And mentally, I'm trying to reset myself to say, just because we're in the weight building stage, the strength building stage, muscle gain phase doesn't leave it to the outcome of eating whatever we want within reason. It's still a structured path, right? And we have to grow towards getting to that point.
Yeah. The flexible approach is definitely the way you want to get to. You just want to make sure you're not skipping the gears and getting there a bit too quickly and then experiencing death by 1,000 cuts. Because one thing I was going to ask you is, having been someone who was 180 pounds, which is effectively an extra 50% of your body weight, do you think much about that? Or do you feel any of those behaviors still exist that you're fighting, or habits that you were serving you when you were 180, you're still thinking, I need to not do that? Is that still happening? Because now you've kept your weight off for a year. I'd be curious to know where you are.
So the initial stage of 180 to 140, kind of, I've kept that off for almost 20 years.
Okay.
Right. From 18 to 38. Right. So not realizing that even 140 wasn't an ideal weight for me. Right. I think the challenge is still like, the craving, something that you may or may not want to consume, the odd hours of eating potentially, right? And that's just an everyday thing. And if now I'm cognizant of it, right? So if I'm doing it, then I know that, and this is something that I like to tell people when they talk to me about RNT, or if I'm on a group chat or whatever, the one thing that I always like to remind myself is that every day is a new day, right? Respect the past so that you can appreciate the present, and appreciate the present so that you can mold your future. And if you think about life in that manner, you learn to forgive yourself for decisions that you intuitively made and be okay with it, right? If you've made a decision and you did something the day before, wake up the next morning and ask yourself, are you going to do that again? Or are you going to make the intentional change with the goals that you set in mind? So that is still something that I battle through every single day, just to say, all right, what is my relationship with food? I still live to eat. Sorry, I still eat to live to a certain degree because I enjoy food. But now I know. Now I'm educated on the subject, and because I know, because I can acknowledge it, even if I'm having a challenging week, you'll never find me going to Ed and saying, hey, I'm struggling with eating off plan, or eating this, or not being adherent. Because the reality is this: if I did, it's a choice, and I made that choice whether I wanted to or not. It's still a choice. And so the way I get over it is I wake up the next morning and I internally ask myself, like, all right, what am I going to do differently today? It's a full on, some people, it doesn't work for everybody. Some people, they think about it and they have to, like, all right, go back to CTP, right? Like, reset everything. For me, it's just, every day is kind of like, all right, and fortunately and unfortunately, I don't really go into the app all the time to update my check-ins. I think that the 12 weeks helped. I still need to check in for last week because I haven't had a chance to go in and actually do it, because I'm always moving around and I'm doing other things. I know that I've logged my weight every day. I know that I've, the days that I haven't got my steps. Last week was probably the first time in quite some time that I didn't. I went to bed instead. And, it's trying to train your mind that if you've made a decision that you're not happy with, forgive yourself and move on.
And then remember, it was a choice. You have a choice.
That's right.
No, it's really interesting because you've kept the weight off. And my question probably should have been around the 140 comparison, because 180 to 140, I feel like you'd mastered that for 20 years, but it was the 140 to where you are now. And it's very interesting hearing you talk about that, because I think this is the hardest bit. I talk about staying in shape is the hardest bit. It's the mind game. It's the battle. So I think you've got some useful insights there for the audience to tap into. Well,
and to that point, and that's why I said, I was like, the muscle building phase has been a mental game, because we talk about, and we look at and we think about, like, all right, am I just building weight, or am I actually building gains, right? And if you're building weight, then you're overly consuming food and not seeing the results in the manner that you want it to. So that's the piece that that I consistently ask myself when I get into the gym where I'm logging my workouts in, the Strong app that I use, do I see progression? And it's not making progress every day, because you're not trying to kill yourself. You're trying to build a framework. You're trying to build continuity. You're trying to, build strength. I went from 15-pound curls to 25-pound curls, but it took a really long time. And in fact, there was a moment, during the 12-week muscle and gain and muscle build phase that we had over leading up to Christmas, where I think Ed wanted us to. It was the pull-up challenge, right? We did wide grip, neutral grip, and close grip, and he told me, he's like, "Don't do this week's challenge." I still did this week's challenge. And the reason being he wanted me not to is because I was feeling some strain in my bicep. And he's like, "Hey, let's lay off pull movements and let's lay off curl movements. Let's give it some time, to kind of work its natural course." And so through that time, I was like, I still want to do this one. I didn't completely ease off of it. I lowered all my weights in those movements. And then now I'm building back up. And now I'm bigger. So now I'm pushing more than what I was pushing prior to that strain. But if we're not being careful about that, then we're going to get into a long-term issue, right? So it's a risk, one that I'm very terrible at, because I didn't listen to him.
Can't make that mistake again.
Yeah.
So Bhavin, how's the physical been the vehicle for you on this journey so far?
It's, I'm doing things now that I wasn't doing before, in that, the non-negotiables has created this need, this want, this desire of go to sleep, wake up. I still struggle with the going to sleep part, but I wake up. And if I'm not getting 7, I'm getting 6 for sure. Before, if I'd binge watch something on Netflix, go to bed, wake up still 4 hours later, and not realizing that what it was doing to me. But that continuity and treating the physical as the vehicle and building that structure, now I'm able to get a lot more accomplished that I want to within a given day, without sacrificing some of the other things that are important to me: family, work. I've traded a lot of the social aspect of things to truly understand where I want my goals to lie. So I don't go out as much. I don't outwardly go out of my way to meet up with people in a social setting necessarily, because if I do that, then it's taking away time from something else. So one of the things in 2024, year 3 for me, is I want to get to a point that either by July, when I turn 40, or by December, I have no real clock on it, because age is just a number. And that's something that RNT just taught me, right? Age is a number, and everything is math, including what we do in the gym. And if you look at it that way, then it can become the vehicle. I want to get into another cut phase some point in time in 2024. And if it bleeds into 2025 for intuitive reasons, or for intentional reasons, or from a guidance point from Ed or someone else, then I'm fine with that. If somebody tells me, "Hey, let's go another 6 months before you go into a cut," that's okay. But it's taught me balance. It's taught me how to accomplish more than what I was able to accomplish before. I haven't achieved all my goals, but I've laid the framework and the foundation. I have some big goals in the next 2 to 5 years, whether they're professional or personal or physical or mental or or social. But it's given me a newfound a new mindset and a new foundation to build off of.
Amazing. And how's it impacted your family?
I think you've had a front row seat to that. It's it's impacted my family because Nisha did it better. She got second place yesterday. That was fantastic to see. I was all, you'd invited everybody, and I thought to myself, I was like, you know what? I don't even want to throw my name in the hat. I was like, I want to get into a real cut phase another year or 2 years later, and then I'll throw my name in the hat. So she did it better, for one. Secondly, I've got kids asking a lot more questions, whether it's nutrition based or whether it's my daughter waking me up at 5 a.m. wanting to go to the YMCA to work out. And we've done that a couple of times. The kids have started to go to a fitness group session twice a week at the YMCA in the evenings after school. We're trying to teach them balance, realizing and acknowledging, of course, that they're still kids, right? So we don't want to completely strip them of their childhood. There's going to be a point in time in their life when they realize, hey, like maybe I should make some changes on my own, right? Like, but if we're showing them the roadmap and if we're being the positive presence that we want to be, then that's great. The other thing is that what I spoke to, which is, the double-digit group of people that we've touched and we've impacted at a personal level. I know most of them personally. 3 or 4 of them are family members. 2 or 3 of them are close family friends or folks that I've known along the way over the last 20 years. And that means a lot. It speaks to the platform that you've built and the lives that you've touched. But it also speaks to, just it being a core foundation of why I wanted to do this.
Amazing. Yeah, like you said, front row seat to seeing your family transform, and it's been remarkable to see. If you're listening to this and you haven't listened to Nisha Vivek's podcast, Bhavin's wife, I think it was a couple episodes ago, but I highly recommend listening to it after to hear a whole different side to the story of what the journey's been like in the last couple of years and how it's impacted, because it's been remarkable to see you both, really thrive and become examples in your community, your family, your friends, and most importantly to your kids as well. I
mean, the one last thing to just add is it has changed how we, live our day to day, and I'll hone in on that in a moment, because we had this conversation in a different group about Nisha going vegan and me being this flexitarian. And it's funny because I've got some of my closest friends who they joke about the fact that I've always kind of been that way. Like, whereas Nisha's like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this right now. And I'm going to jump all in and I'm going to blend my tempeh, and I'm not going to,
no one's letting get away with that.
Yeah, exactly. There's no excuses kind of thing. And I'm like, you're extreme. I was like, and she goes, well, my extreme is what drives me. I'm like, that's great. Like, I love that. On the other end, here I am, the flexitarian, but it takes me a little bit longer to get to the same end point mentally if I'm making a decision like that. But what it has done is, because of the education that I gained from RNT on the ways I can still consume the same macros, now I know what they are, right? And how much of those individual macros I need. I am able to lead a more sustainable life and be a better contributor within the family to say, you know what, I will eat vegan. We went to our trip in California, spent 9 days. There was a 4-day stretch where we ate at the same vegan restaurant for 2 or 3 meals out of each day, because we liked it and because it was a good option for us and it was providing us with the nutrients that we wanted, and it was a great spot, right? We share food a little bit differently versus being on our own kind of mode. The other thing is, my mom asked me, she goes, hey, is like, can you create a meal plan for me? I'm like, sure. Like, and so I gave her, kind of like this general framework. I kind of used similar math, and I'm a finance guy, so I didn't call Ed and say, hey, can you put this together? I was like, I realized, all right, fine. I was like, what's your weight right now? Like, how much? And so I came up with like this equation, and I built her kind of like a plan. Realized very quickly that this was not going to be good for her. Like, this is not sustainable. And then Barimo's spreadsheet came around, and my mom's fairly decent in Excel. And so, I sent it to her. I'm like, hey, let me walk you through kind of what this does. And so a couple weeks go by and she sends me this message. She goes, hey, she's like, I'm forwarding you the spreadsheet that you sent me. I open it up and there's like 25 tabs. And it's literally pre-stocked days of meals of how her and dad want to like just move things around. And they built their like this plan. And so before they went to India, I was asking her, I was like, hey, how are things going? She sent me like the screenshot of a piece of paper with her weight for like every single day, because she's been logging now too. And they dropped like 4 to 6 pounds before they left for India in the last like 6 weeks. I'm like, that's great. I'm like, they did like 10,000 steps, no weight training, no cardio, maybe a little bit of light yoga and some cardio, and just the nutrition.
Yeah.
And I think that speaks volumes, because I went from them raising me with no education in the matter and no, nutrition background, like Gujarati food, rice, dal, carb heavy diet, thinking that, peanuts and beans and that sort of thing are protein, right? And going to me educating them and kind of coming into this happy medium, it's a full circle, which is incredible.
Amazing. I mean, it's life changing, and life extending for that generation, because the impact they can have on them is just adds years. That's quality of life that we probably don't appreciate at this age.
100%.
So, Bhavin, what almost kept you from joining and starting on this journey?
Honestly, it was I've been a person that if I put my mind to something, that I can really get it done. For me, it was the challenge of, can I do this with everything else around me? And initially it was kind of like, is this real? Like, is this guy in the UK actually just like, what does he do? Like, is he real? Is this platform real? Are these people real? Or is this just some website on the internet that claims to do this kind of thing? Once I got over that, it was really the true fear is, it wasn't really the fear of failure. It was really the fear of, can I do this with my travel, with family, with social, with work, and building, a consistent plan around the goals that I have. And RNT helped me along the way to lay that foundation and to build upon that foundation. And
amazing.
I like to share this with other people as well, as I am most definitely the exception, not the rule, because most of the folks that in the cohorts that I speak to, I don't know anybody that travels as much as I do, whether it's personal or professional. I mean, I did over 20 trips in 2023. And then if you tack on our personal trips on top of that, we're probably hovering over close to 30, maybe 30 plus.
Yeah, that's a lot. It's a lot of days spent out on the road, and he still did it.
Yeah, travel's my life.
How did you overcome the fear? So that's the big thing.
I had a good support system, with the coaches at RNT. And
no, how did you overcome the fear before taking the plunge of, right, this is my life, how can I achieve that with this?
Honestly, it was me looking at Nisha and me trying to get over my herniated disc. And once I realized that I had to make a change, and I had to establish some rules and some guidelines, the fear was in the rear view. It had to be, right? And I think that, it's interesting that you should ask the question in that way, because, when I joined, I actually asked my cousin Barmo to join. And I was like, hey, why don't we do this together? I was like, you're kind of trying to make some changes. And it was very interesting a year later when he did do it, because the conversation that we were having was exactly around this subject, which is, if you can't get over that, not necessarily fear, but if you can't get over the mindset of, I have to do this, and it is a goal that is second to none. And if you can't wrap your head around the goals that you're setting yourself around and establishing the baseline non-negotiables, then it is appropriate to potentially wait. And it is something that he did wait, right? And he did eventually come around, and he said, all right, now is the right time. And that also is not true for everybody, because some people, like myself, like, I'm not going to wait.
Yeah.
If I think that it's the right time for me to do it, I'm going to do it. Other people, they have good reason. Like in his case, he had good reason as to why he wanted to wait. He knew that
and some people need to just do it, because they will always justify a reason to wait.
Correct.
Parimo's smashing it, by the way.
Absolutely. I loved his video and his Instagram post of the girls and my nieces and him working out. Yeah. I was like, how do you do that? Because if I threw my kids in the gym, they'd be trying to mess around with all my heavy dumbbells and whatnot. And I'm like, we're just cut from a different breed like that. And so I tried to buy this foam gym set, not realizing very quickly that it was only 6 pounds. I'm like, these guys aren't going to play with this. I was like, I passed it along to my brother. I was like, here, have your girls like mess around with it.
Amazing. Amazing. Any final words for the listeners, Bhavin?
No, just thank you. Thank you for being there. Thank you for providing us with an opportunity to learn, to better ourselves, and for creating a platform that is, available to a lot of people with different challenges, who all just somehow grew to become a motley crew and have a same end goal and vision in mind. Right. One of the most cherishing things that I capture when I participate in the cohorts or when I listen to the video calls is we are all different. We all have different struggles. We all have different reasons as to why we wanted to embark on this journey. But the one thing that is consistent is we have the community of RNT. We have great coaches that supported us along the way and leaned into our various reasons. And we all have the same goals. So when we get into a conversation, whether we even have any knowledge whatsoever about what that person is thinking, it just kind of cohesively comes together. And that's very interesting and very admirable to see. And I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Amazing. And you're very welcome. And yeah, thank you for all your support and continuing to spread the word to your friends and family. It really means a lot.
Thank you. Have a great day, man.